Just like the water winged dove sings a song, sounds like she's singing. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Just like the water winged dove sings a song, sounds like she's singing. Ooh, baby, ooh, say ooh. And let days go by like sand in the wind, in the web that is my home. I begin again. Said to my friend, baby, nothing else matters. She was no more than a baby then. Awake, see broken hearted, something within. Well, hello everybody. This is Chrystallynn, Cowgirl Astrologer. Thank you for joining me tonight. And I just had to start our song with one of our famous Geminis, Stevie Nicks. And if you listen to that song, the words of that song, it is such a Gemini song. So I challenge you guys to go and look up the words and listen to it if you want to know a little bit more about the characteristics of a Gemini. So tonight we are going to be talking about Gemini rising, Gemini ascendant. This is part of my rising sign series. I already have Aries and Taurus out. So if you have not seen those and you'd like to, you can find those. They are up. And tonight we are doing Gemini rising. Now, your rising sign, I'm just going to kind of repeat this probably in all the videos, is based on your time of birth. It's also based on your city and state. And to get an accurate, understanding of your life path, we need to know, as astrologers, your rising sign or ascendant. Now, if you do not know your time of birth and you just can't get it, and you're listening to this video tonight and you have the sun or moon in Gemini, you will probably recognize some of these characteristics in your own life, okay? But since we are talking about the ascendant, we are going to be more specific of the life path of the Gemini ascendant or rising, okay? They're called either one. Now, real quick, if you want to check out my website, I've got a free birth chart calculator. You can put your information in, find out where your ascendant is. If you're still confused trying to do that, throw me an email. It's below, and I will help you find that, okay? So no problem at all. I'd be happy to do that. So let's get started. So, and I am attempting to talk slow right now, because when I start talking about Geminis, the Mercurian energy just goes wild inside of me, and I can feel how that operates inside of you. So as a Gemini rising, Gemini is ruled by Mercury. Mercury is one of the fastest moving planets that goes around the sun. It is the god of communication. Gemini represents the communicator of the zodiac. It's the third sign. It's the third sign in the zodiac. We've got Aries, Taurus, and then Gemini. It also represents the age frame from 14 to 21. So a lot of times when you meet a Gemini or Gemini rising, they always have this very youthful way about them. A lot of times too, if you talk to like a Gemini woman who's older, and you've never met them, but you talk to them on the phone, you'll think you're talking to like a teenager or a young person. They always have this witty, up-to-date type of language. They've got a youthful voice. They're cool. They know what's going on. They know the lingo of, their social atmosphere. A lot of times you'll see Gemini risings working as teachers, as counselors. They're excellent journalists and writers because it's ruled by Mercury. Mercury rules the hands. So you'll also see men who work in construction, but more specific, like creative woodworking, cabinets, very detailed type stuff, fix-it type things. They're just good at that. Now, Virgo does rule Gemini. I'm sorry, Mercury does rule Gemini and Virgo, but it comes through a little different to each sign. When it comes to the Gemini, Mercury is much more scattery because Gemini is an air sign. So they operate from their mind. That's how they, operate in life. It goes up here first. Okay, now the Virgo, it's an earth sign. So they're a lot more practical and they want to see, Mercury is a lot more, in order. They see things in order. But both of them have a very, very fast-paced moving mind because, again, Mercury is very fast. So the Gemini loves to think. They need a lot of stimulation. That's why they're constantly, they'll be the ones on the internet and they'll get a little piece of this and a little piece of that. They don't necessarily like to go really deep. Sometimes people think Gemini risings are a little superficial. But when we say superficial, it's really because they operate from their mind, not so much from their heart, like the water signs do. And so also, when you think about that 14 to 21 year age span, that's adolescence. That's the time period where we are exploring, that we don't want necessarily deep commitment, that we're meeting new people, we're going here, we're going there. A lot of times during those years, we are connected to our siblings, we're growing up with them, our cousins. Geminis are very, very connected to their community. Because it's the third house, it rules communication, local communication. It's the small town girl. It's the small town guy. The other thing, and I'll kind of talk about men and women because there's a little bit of a difference. The symbol for Gemini is the twins. So often they have what I like to call a committee, a whole boardroom that goes on in their mind of contemplating different thoughts. That's why a Gemini is so hard to pin down, because they kind of go through this whole process of almost talking to themselves because their mind is so busy. That's not hard for them to do. And they're discussing it with, different angles of the story. The twins give the good side and the bad side. Now, Geminis can go from being really happy, really easygoing, everything's great, to on a dime, they can then be mad, be angry, be offended. And you don't even know what happened. That's how quick that they shift back and forth between these two twins. Okay. The other story that comes to mind when we talk about Gemini is Adam and Eve. Eve wanted to know why she couldn't eat the apple on the tree. They were told, now you can have the garden, you can, have everything you want, but you cannot do one thing. You can't eat this apple, because if you eat this apple, you will have the knowledge of good and evil. So a lot of people are mad at Eve for eating that apple. But see, Eve was a Gemini and she was very curious. What do you mean you're going to keep me from the knowledge of good and evil? She was curious. She wanted to know. I don't believe it was so much of an evil act as much as curiosity. You're going to tell me that I can't have that knowledge, and she just couldn't resist it. She had to have it. So that is often the life of the Gemini, of kind of like, you can't have this, but they're always going to find a way to get it. Now, Mercury is a little tricky, okay? When you're dealing with Mercury, Mercury can be the trickster. Okay, so Mercury can be a little bit deceptive. So the Gemini has to deal with the ability that they're so smart and quick-witted and usually 10 steps ahead of most people, that they don't use that advantage, to manipulate or to trick people because they're just so darn quick. So we'll talk a little bit more about this as we get into the houses. I want to start kind of filtering down through these houses and what they mean in the Gemini rising's life, and we'll talk characteristic stuff will keep coming through. So let's look at the second house in Cancer. Okay. A second house is your values. It's how you make your daily money. It's the things that you value as a child. So often the Gemini is very close to their mother. They want to please their mother. Because Cancer's there, they're also very nurturing in the way that they make money. That's why they often make excellent school teachers, because they love children. Any way that they can make money and working with children is very powerful for them. They can also be counselors. They can be caretakers in this way, because they're very quick. They're very hardy. They, like I said, they work with their hands, so they can get in there and they can work hard. But they usually come up and work with different types of ways that they can be nurturing in the way that they make money. So again, people think they're kind of superficial and don't care. But when it comes to money and making money, these people are very smart. And they use that intuitive gift to do it. Now, when we get into the third house represents communication, which is what rules Gemini, okay? It also connects to the community, to local situations. And they like to be in the know. They know everything that's going on in the neighborhood. They know everything that's going on with the cousins and the siblings. And they love to bring their family together, because the third house for the Gemini rising is ruled by Leo. Now, this is also a very strong placement, because Leo is the lion and it roars. So Geminis are very powerful in their communication. They know what they're talking about. They can be very competitive. They can have a lot of intellectual debates. Some people feel like, gosh, they're never wrong. Well, that Leo energy, it's hard for them to see anything else, because they've usually done their homework. Now, where the Gemini or the Gemini rising fails in their research is they don't dig down deep enough. So a lot of times they know just enough about everything, like the jack of all trades, but master of none, okay? And that's not a put down. It's just that they get bored easy. And so when they're studying stuff, they want to know just enough of what they need to know to get the job done. But a lot of times they miss those details, where Mercury in Virgo is going to not miss those little details. So that's a really important factor here, that they need to slow down a little bit if they're going to, really master something. They've got to take their time. So with the third house being in Leo, like I was saying, they are the star often of their community. They rise to top positions. That is not uncommon. And people come to them. They love to have parties. They love to have celebrations, love to get together, love to be in the know. Okay, let's get into the fourth house. Now, the fourth house is ruled by Virgo. Fourth house represents mother, represents the home you were raised in. Often, the Gemini rising is raised by a mother who is very perfectionistic, who is very intelligent, who expects a lot from the Gemini rising. So as a child, they're always trying to please their parents. They're always trying to show their parents that, they have this strong intellectual ability, because their mother is very intelligent. Their mother is very detailed. And again, they do want to please their mother. When they have their homes that they, if you're getting married and having children and you're a Gemini rising, you're going to want to carry that over into your home as well. There is a strong perfectionism there when it comes to taking care of your home. Very detailed. When we get into the fifth house is ruled by Libra, and the fifth house represents, children, romance, that first love relationship or that new relationship that's exciting. It's in Libra. So you really want to enjoy your children. You want to be in a relationship that's fair, that is intellectual, that is stimulating conversations. If you are a Gemini and you're in a relationship with someone that won't talk to you, that's probably the worst thing that can happen, because you need that stimulation. That's part of your foreplay, okay? As a Gemini rising, it's mental conversation. And if you don't have that, and you don't have those good, healthy debates and discussions and, constantly challenging your intellect, you get really frustrated. You shut down, and you don't want to shut down Gemini, okay? So as far as children go, you're proud of your children. This is a good placement for children. You want your children to be very well educated and have culture and learn lots of things about the arts and all of that, music. So you do definitely give your children a little piece of everything. Now let's get into the sixth house in Scorpio. This is where things get a little intense. This is where you do not, under any circumstances, want to underestimate the Gemini rising, because when it comes to work, it comes to daily routines, they are ruthless. They are focused. They are powerful. They know what they need to do. They take the top position. This can also lead to problems in your daily work. Sixth house can represent hidden enemies. So often the Gemini gets into a lot of dramatic squabbles, arguments, but they're superficial. But in their daily work life, because they do catch everything, and they kind of have a funny sense of humor. And sometimes if you don't get their sense of humor, it can be kind of sarcastic. But, they're pretty competitive when it comes to sixth house, their daily work. They're going to get in there and they're going to take over. And remember, their communication is that lion. So when it comes to working and focusing on something that they're passionate about and making money, they're powerful. So that's good. They're good with research. They're pretty good with routine when it comes to sixth house stuff. Scorpio is a fixed sign. It can have some love affairs in the work world for them that can be kind of intense. So be a little bit careful, falling in love with the principal, things like that. Scandal. And that's when we move into the seventh house. The seventh house is relationships in Sagittarius. So that is the opposite of Gemini. But as you know, the Sagittarius is extremely intelligent as well. But the Sagittarius is the philosopher. So the Gemini rising is often very attracted to the teacher, to the philosopher, to somebody who is very deep, even though they're a little more surfacey. The problem is, once they get into this relationship because they need constant stimulation, sometimes they can get frustrated with that philosopher who's talking about long, deep subjects. It's like, oh my God, let's get on to something else. So it's always, when you have your opposition, that's kind of the struggle there, that you don't get in a relationship that gets stale, or that they become kind of like they're your teacher, you're the student. Well, that goes along for so long. But after time, if the Gemini rising, if their little butterfly wings are getting weighed down, they're not gonna be happy with that. Okay. So this can also represent being attracted to somebody from a foreign culture or a different culture or different religious background. A lot of times this is difficult because, remember, the mother is so perfectionistic. So when they bring somebody home with a different religion, or that's a bad boy or bad girl, somebody different, that Virgo energy in the mother department can be very judgmental. So they end up rebelling a little bit from mom, from dad. That's not uncommon, okay? This also could be a place where there is scandal, right? In relationships where they get themselves into trouble, having those relationships in the work world. So you can kind of see this, play out as a possibility. Now, 8th house is Capricorn. So we know that the Gemini rising does care about money, does have a very structured and strong, ambitious idea about when they bring their money together, about their in-laws. There seems to be a lot of, again, power struggles here. So if you're a Gemini rising and you're married, whether you're married to a man or married to a woman, sometimes the in-laws can kind of have a hard controlling power struggle type thing there. And money can be kind of intense. You are very focused on that, and you want to know you've got that retirement. That's why they often work for school districts or work where they have retirement, where they have medical, where they have all those things. They care about that stuff. They're smart, and they want to plan for the future because they want to go travel. Once they get to retirement age, they want to get out and go, and they want to know they've got money back in them. They do not want to worry about that. Okay. So let's move on to the 9th house in Aquarius. This is where we've got, a lot of times can represent the father, can represent spiritual learning, can represent, higher education. So the father of the Gemini rising is often kind of strange, is often kind of different. He's not following the norm. He does his own thing. He might even be an inventor. The Gemini rising looks up to their father. They're very fascinated because it's that air sign, and they're very fascinated, and they want to be like him. They want to please him. But, they often struggle not wanting to do better than him. They kind of struggle with this. So it's like, and then when they bring their bad boy home or their bad girl home, it just brings a lot of craziness to the dynamics of the family. But also when they're studying, they love to study, learning different things. Aquarius rules the airwaves, so they can be excellent on the internet, excellent bringing groups together. They want to study social happenings. They want to be really good at that. And this is where that 9th house comes in. Okay, let's move into the 10th house, midheaven in Pisces. Now, this is kind of interesting. For some reason, this connection to me never quite seems right, but it is right. Because when the Gemini expresses their work and all this other stuff is going on behind the scenes that they're putting in control and in order in their lives, when they finally come out and their reputation, they're seen as creative. They're seen as spiritual. They're seen as somebody that, can really mold into any type of situation. They can be very flexible. I think, though, this is where you get sometimes the accusation of Geminis kind of having that bipolar type personality where, they're happy one minute and then they're depressed the next. Well, the 10th house is what we see that comes out to the public. It's their reputation. And Pisces can be so wishy-washy. So they've got that Pisces, that Neptune energy in their career, and it's all over the place. Okay. But when they harness this, when they really get this, they are huge, powerful influence. I mean, they can bring in the masses. They can speak, public speaking. They can be a very strong, powerful influence. They can take on a strong spiritual pursuit. You'll see them a lot of times doing massage, hair cutting. And as they're doing that, they're in the healing arts. That's not uncommon either. Gemini's kind of the hippie too. So, you've got kind of this free-spirited, Stevie Nicks type of personality. So that's at least what I see there. Now, the ninth house is in Aries. Ninth house rules your groups, your friends, your circles, you know, your teachers, often even like an older brother or an older figure in your life. So a lot of times they have strong military people around them, very strong competitive people around them that surround them. Sometimes in those group circles, they can get into trouble because they do tend to like to gossip. They tend to like to know about everything. If you want to know something about someone, talk to your Gemini friend because they'll know. But that gets them in trouble, and it gets them into a lot of arguments in their bigger circles. Now, remember, in the third house, where there's Leo, they're popular in their little community. But when they get out amongst the people, you know, that are of their own status, there can be a lot of competitiveness between them. And last, the 12th house in Taurus. So 12th house really represents that subconscious, that private place inside of you, that sanctuary. And the Gemini loves the good life. The Gemini loves to enjoy good things. So when they do rest, which is very rare, they're busy. They kind of end up almost exhausting themselves because their mind is so busy and they do so much. And then all of a sudden they like flatline and they just can't even move. And they're like, I got to go to bed. I got to eat. I got to take care of myself. And that's when they want to kind of self-nurture. They want to go hide out, maybe in their room, turn on the TV, you know, bring in the cookies, you know, and self-soothe in their private time. This can also be a place where they understand women well, okay, because Venus is there. And even for Gemini men, okay, Gemini men, and I'll just say a few last things. I don't know how long this is getting, and I try not to make these too long, you guys, but this is your rising sign. You know, I want you to kind of have a lot to think about. They tend to be, especially when they're young, you know, the Gemini man is kind of like the Robin Hood or the Peter Pan, where they, you know, they attract a whole group like a little gang. And sometimes the female Gemini can be like a little bully when she's young, you know, and she's got all these friends and they kind of get together and they're kind of the troublemakers of, you know, that group over there, because they can draw these groups together, but they always take the leadership role. But here in the 12th house in Taurus, where we have Venus, their deep subconscious mind, they really have a connection with the beautiful things of life. And Gemini men really understand women well. And that's why they become like really good friends. Gemini men can be your best friends if you're a woman, you know, not only in a romantic relationship, but they can also be, you know, they can also be great friends with you. And they understand women. Okay, so I won't go on into that too much, but that's just a little something there to think about. The only other thing I was going to say regarding Mother Gemini rising is a lot of times they can become besties. A lot of times when you see that Virgo energy, you can see a really good friendship with the mother. But this often happens much later, okay? Much later, because they've got to grow through that. The Gemini rising will rebel. You know, she'll rebel pretty young and want to get out on her own and want to experience life on her own. But she always has that close relationship with her mother. So that's something that I see. So you guys, I'm sure there's always so much more I can say, but I just wanted to give you kind of a rundown. Gemini rising. If you have a Gemini rising and any of this you can identify with, I would love to hear it. I'd love to hear that, or if you want to add anything to this, please comment below. And if you'd like to book a reading with me, you can go to my website, cowgirlastrologer.com, and I have a couple great specials right now for readings. I'd love to read for you. So have an awesome night, you guys, and thank you for watching.